In this video, I'm going to show you a easy method for converting units from one system to another. For example, 12 inches converted into millimeters, 33 pounds per square inch converted into pascals. Those are both units of pressure. 5 litres converted into cubic inches. Those are both units of volume. And 10 stone, 3 pounds converted into kilograms. Those are weights, or more accurately, masses. But this method can be used with any units converted into any other units. And luckily, it's very easy to remember. It's very simple, but not immediately intuitively obvious. One important thing to state at the beginning is you can only convert units of length into other length units and units of pressure into other pressure units and so on. It won't work if you try to convert, for example, units of mass into units of force, volume, or anything else. Okay, so let's get started. 12 inches into millimeters. Let's take this one first. Now, we need a relationship between inches and millimeters, and there is one that I remember, which is 1 inch is exactly 25.4 millimeters. So that's the ratio, if you like, between inches and millimeters. So I'm going to treat this as an equation. 1 inch equals 25.4 millimeters. And I'm going to treat the units as a kind of just a multiplying thing to the number. 25.4 is being multiplied by whatever that is. We know it's millimeters, but we're just going to treat it as without worrying about what it is. And same with the inch, multiplying the 1 on the left-hand side. So what I'm going to do is divide both sides of this equation by 1 inch. So 1 inch divided by 1 inch equals 25.4 millimeters divided by 1 inch. And on the left-hand side, these cancel, the numbers cancel, and we're left with 1. So 1 without any unit is equal to 25.4 millimeters over 1 inch. And now we look at our problem that we have to work out, which is 12 inches converted into millimeters. I'm going to multiply 12 inches by 1, and that's this one over here. And when I multiply 12 inches by 1, I'm not changing anything about the 12 inches. Anything multiplied by 1 is whatever it was to start with. But instead of writing 12 inches times 1, I'm going to replace the 1 by this expression, which is equal to 1. So we'll get rid of that 1, and we'll write, instead of the 1, 25.4 millimeters divided by 1 inch. And having got that, what I can do is cancel the unit on the top with the unit on the bottom, and that leaves me 12 times 25.4 millimeters divided by 1. Still got this 1 here, which is just 12 times 25.4 millimeters, and that gives me the answer 304.8 millimeters. And you probably know that's approximately correct because the average ruler in your geometry kit or pencil case is probably about 12 inches and about 300 millimeters in length. So that's the way this method works. What we do is we look for a relationship between the units that are involved. In this case, let me choose a different color here just to make it clearer. I chose this relationship, and then I divided one side by the other in order to get them one on top of the other. That would allow me to cancel the one I didn't want, which was inch. I cancelled that with inch, and it left me with the one that I did want, which was millimeters on the top. So that's the way this method works, and I think you'll see that it's really very simple. If we had wanted to go from millimeters to inches, what would we do? For example, 150 millimeters is how many inches? Well, I want to multiply this by 1, where instead of writing 1, I'm going to write something that is equal to 1. And what I'm going to write here is 1 inch divided by 25.4 millimeters. And you'll see that this is actually just upside down compared to the way we had it before. The reason I've done it upside down is so that the millimeters on the top here can cancel with the millimeters on the bottom. If I'd had the millimeters still on the top, I wouldn't be able to cancel them. And it leaves me with inch on the top. This expression here is still equal to 1, and we can get that from our starting expression. 1 inch equals 25.4 millimeters. If we divide both sides by 25.4 millimeters instead of dividing by 1 inch as we did here. Now let's just see what that looks. 1 inch divided by 25.4 millimeters equals, and then we have 25.4 millimeters, and that's divided by 25.4 millimeters. Those cancel, the units cancel, we're left with 1. So there we go. The net result of this is when we have an equation which is an equality, like 1 inch is 25.4 millimeters, we can simply write one over the other and do it either way up, whatever suits us, so we can cancel with what we want. So just finishing off this calculation here, we've got 150 millimeters, or we've cancelled the unit, so it's now just 150 times 1 divided by 25.4, and the units are inch, because that's what we've got left with on the top here. And so that's just 150 divided by 25.4, which is 5.91 inch to 2 decimal places. So that's how we can do that conversion. We can chain these multiplications together to do more complicated conversions. For example, 30 miles per hour into meters per second. So they're both units of speed. And how do we go about doing this? Well, we need to get some equalities like the one we started with here, 1 inch is 25.4 millimeters. We also need to recognize that this mph is miles per hour or miles divided by hour. So it might be more appropriate to write that as mile divided by hour. So I want to multiply that by something, and let's do the distance on the top. Miles needs to go into meters. So I do know that 1 mile is equal to 1,760 yards. And that's just one I happen to remember. So which one of these do I want on the top? Well, I want to get rid of mile and end up with yards. Of course, I'm going to have to do another one to get rid of yards in a minute, but that's fine. But miles got to be on the bottom, so that means yards is on the top. So 1,760 yards over 1 mile. Now I've got to get rid of yards. Well, I do know that there are 3 feet, 3 ft, that's foot, equals 1 yard. So I can use that equality. I need to write 1 on the top, 1 on the bottom. Yards is on the top. I want to cancel that, so I need yards with its number on the bottom. And the other one, 3 feet, goes on the top. So that's going to cancel. Let me do this cancelling as we go. Mile cancels with mile. Yards cancels with, let's make it yards. Now I've got feet. I need to cancel feet. What am I going to do for feet? Well, 1 foot is 12 inches. So I can do that. Now foot's on the top, so I need to put my version over here with it on the bottom, with its number. That's 1 foot, 12 inch on the top. And then I can go back to using inch. 1 inch is 25.4 millimeters. And that gets me in millimeters. Let's do the cancelling as we go. Inch, inch. Now, I didn't want it in millimeters, I wanted it in meters, but we do know that there are 1,000 millimeters equals 1 meter. So if I put the millimeters on the bottom, I can cancel it with the millimeters I've got there. So I put that on the bottom with its number, and I put 1 meter on the top. So that's going to get me meters after I do all these numerical bits. And now we need to do hour into seconds. That's what we needed, seconds. So I just carry on multiplying. It's always multiply. So I can multiply this by something that is going to cancel with hour. Now, because hour is on the bottom, I'm going to need to put hour on the top so that I can cancel it and leave me my new unit. In this case, I'm going to go to minutes on the bottom. And because the time quantity, or the unit for time, in this case hour, in this case seconds, has always got to be on the bottom. That's why I'm putting it on the bottom here. Mile was on the top, So I made sure that mile was on the bottom here to do the cancelling and leave me a unit on the top, a unit that I wanted. But when you've got it starting on the bottom, you put your same unit on the top so that you can do the cancelling with this one on the bottom, like that, and leave me with a time unit on the bottom, which is where the time unit belongs in the case of speed, miles per hour or meters per second. So the numbers that go in here, 1 hour is how many minutes? 60 minutes. So that's fine, that gets me minutes. I need to get it into seconds. So I've got to multiply this by something. Minutes here is on the bottom. I want to get rid of that. So I'm doing minutes on the top. And that means I can go from minutes to second. 1 minute is 60 seconds. And that will cancel the minutes. So I've now got left with seconds on the bottom, and over here meters on the top, which is what I need. So I can now get the calculator and say 30 times 1760 times 3 times 12 times 25.4. I could multiply it by 1, but there's no point in doing that, just as there's no point in dividing by 1 mile, 1 yard, 1 foot, 1 inch. But I do have to divide it by this 1,000. So let's divide that by the 1,000. And then I carry on over here with the 1 hour over 60 minutes. Well, that's 1,000. 60 is on the bottom, so I've got to divide it by that as well, and another 60 on the bottom as well, and that's going to give me meters over seconds. And if we put all that into the calculator, I get 13.41 meters per second, and that's to 2 decimal places. And that is the correct answer. So I haven't had to remember any direct relationship between miles per hour and meters per second. I've made do with some stepping stones along the way, yards and miles and so forth. So I'm a bit old-fashioned like that, but you can look up those any way you do it or want to do it. Doesn't matter what equality you find. For example, if you look up a conversion unit directly from miles per hour to meters per second, we can use, for example, the relationship 1 mile per hour is equal to 0.447 meters per second. I've just found that off the internet, but you may look in some other book, for example, and find something similar. And therefore, I can divide both sides by mile per hour. 0.447 meters per second divided by 1 mile per hour. And then we can go directly to doing our conversion. 30 miles per hour times 1, but I'm not going to write 1, I'm going to write this fraction here, 0.447 with the unit meters per second over 1 mile per hour. Then I can do the cancellation of the units, which leaves me meters per second. Gives me 30 times 0.447 meters per second. I've still got the 1 on the bottom, but I won't write that in because dividing by 1 doesn't change anything. And that is equal to 13.41 meters per second. This is an approximation. I've written equals here, but actually there are more decimal places after this, 0.447 something or other, which I haven't bothered with. So as long as we can find something that gives us an equality, we can use that. Another approximation you may be familiar with is that 5 miles is approximately equal to 8 kilometres. That's quite close. Miles are always bigger than kilometres. If you've got 8 kilometres, you've got fewer miles in it. So that's one way to remember that. But we can use that to say 1 equals 8 kilometres over 5 miles if we want. And then this becomes our equation that we can use to multiply, or do it the other way up if we have to, if we want to cancel miles with something. Well, this would be right for doing cancellation of miles on the top, like for example 30 miles per hour. We could multiply it by this to get rid of the miles. It doesn't always have to be 1 on the bottom or 1 on the top. It works very well with any equality. I'll show you just one more example of a conversion. This one is going to be a volume. In this case, we're going to ask what is 107 cubic inches converted into litres, both units of volume. Why did I pick 107? I've just looked up on the internet about Harley-Davidson motorcycles. The Americans still use cubic inches, but we use litres for the capacities of our engines. So just for fun, we'll convert a Harley-Davidson motorcycle engine at 107 cubic inches and see how many litres it is. So we need something that is going to go from cubic inches to litres, and you can look up a direct conversion on the internet and use the method. But if we don't have access to the internet, we've got to do something a little bit different, and it's essentially the same method but a bit longer. 107, now cubic inches is inch times inch times inch. Let's multiply that by something that is going to cancel. Inch times inch times inch, and we can use the 25.4 millimeters equals 1 inch relationship for that. So I've got 25.4 millimeters times 25.4 millimeters times 25.4 millimeters. Each one of these, so I've got that one, 25.4 over millimeters over 1 inch. I haven't bothered writing the 1 inch in because it's just 1, we don't really need it. And I've written it down 3 times because I need to cancel with the 3 in our cubic inch. That's this cubic inch. That's what the index of 3 means here. So we can cancel those with these, and that's going to give me an answer in cubic millimeters. Well, I didn't want cubic millimeters. I wanted litres, so we've got to carry on. And now what I remember about a litre, if you think about a litre, how much is a litre if you drank a litre of water? Is it something about the size of a house, or the size of a car, or the size of a book, or a mobile phone? Well, I always remember a litre of water is 10 centimetres by 10 centimetres by 10 centimetres, and that is 1 litre. Next time you're in the supermarket, have a look at a 1 litre bottle of water and imagine that it's been poured into a cube and see how big it is. It won't be 1 centimetre by 1 centimetre by 1 centimetre, or it won't be a metre by a metre by a metre. It's going to be 10 by 10 by 10 centimetres. So we can use that. 10 centimetres is 100 millimetres. So I can even go direct from there. So on the top, I want, oops, I don't want to equal there. I want a times, and then I've got 1 litre on the top, and I'm going to have to cancel something with millimetres here. So I know 1 litre is 100 millimetres times 100 millimetres times 100 millimetres, so I can just do that. 100 millimetres times 100 millimetres, making use of this equality. 1 litre, write it over here, 1 litre is equal to 100 millimetres times 100 millimetres times 100 millimetres. It's that equality that allows me to write this. And then I can cancel these millimetres, one with that one, and that one with that one, and so we don't really need that now. I'm ending up with 107 times 25.4 times 25.4 times 25.4, and that's going to give me the answer. I've only got litres left on the top, and I've got to divide it by 100 times 100 times 100, and if I do that, then I'm left with the answer 1.753, and that's litres to 3 decimal places. And so a 107 cubic inch Harley-Davidson has an engine capacity of 1.753 litres. So I hope you can see the advantage of using this method. There's very little to remember as long as you can get some relationship between the physical quantities of distance or time or force or whatever it is you're measuring. Write it out as an equality. You write it as A equals B, whatever it is, newtons to pounds force or whatever, and therefore 1 equals b divided by a, and it also equals a divided by b. Whichever way up you need this, you use it to make the cancellations work. So have a practice at that with some fairly straightforward conversions to start with, and then you can try it on more complex ones as you go. I hope that helps. That is all. Goodbye.